Greetings, Thrillseekers. I am the Master Programmer, Curator of Forbidden Knowledge. Today, I bring you 3 chilling stories unearthed by Beowulf, our investigator of the strange and mysterious. This time, we venture into the frozen wilds, where icy landscapes conceal ancient terrors waiting to be discovered. So, if you're looking for a fright, something scary to watch at night, stay with us as we explore these 3 extraordinary tales. First, in The Windigo's Call. 2 hunters vanish during a blizzard in the Canadian wilderness. When they find strange tracks and hear whispers in the wind, they realize they are not alone. Next, in The Frost Hag. Children begin to disappear in a remote Nordic village as winter's grip tightens. Locals speak of the Frost Hag, a spectral figure who steals the unwary under the cover of darkness. Finally, in The Ningen Beneath the Ice. Researchers encounter a pale, humanoid figure moving beneath the frozen surface. Is this a new discovery, or an old monster laying in wait? These stories are not for the faint of heart, so sit back, turn down the lights, and listen to the eerie tales Beowulf has uncovered. And if you enjoy our content, please subscribe to our channel for more chilling stories and dark discoveries. Welcome to another journey into the unknown, brought to you by the Dark Files. The storm came faster than anyone expected. Deep in the northern Canadian wilderness, 2 hunters, Caleb and Emmett, found themselves caught in a howling blizzard. They had set out 3 days earlier to hunt elk for their struggling village, but the sudden storm forced them to take shelter in an old abandoned trapper's cabin. The first night, the wind screamed like banshees, and the snow piled high against the cabin walls. Caleb paced nervously by the fire while Emmett tried to sleep. Around midnight, there was a faint knock at the door, so soft it could have been mistaken for a branch tapping against the wood. But when it came again, louder this time, both men froze.
"No one else would be out in this,"
Caleb said, gripping his rifle. Emmett opened the door slowly, but there was nothing outside, just the swirling snow and darkness. They chalked it up to the wind and tried to settle back in, though neither felt at ease. As days continued to pass, the blizzard showed no signs of stopping. They were running out of food and firewood, and the growing cold gnawed at their bones. Caleb insisted they conserve their energy, but Emmett began pacing by the frosted windows. That's when he swore he saw something. A figure standing amongst the snow-covered trees.
"Someone's out there,"
he muttered. Caleb joined him at the window, but saw nothing.
"You're imagining things. No one could survive out there. Not in this storm."
As the night wore on, they began to hear faint, disembodied cries carried on the wind. Cries that sounded like a woman calling for help.
"Help me, please."
Emmett's face paled.
"We can't leave her out there. She'll die."
But Caleb grabbed his arm.
"No, nobody's out there. It's the storm, or something else. Don't open that door."
The storm grew even more brutal, and the calls outside grew louder. They no longer sounded distant. They came from just outside the cabin walls.
"Help me, please. I'm so cold."
This time, Caleb heard it too, and he recognized the voice. It was his wife.
"Open the door, Caleb. I need you."
He stood by the fire, shaking his head.
That's not her. She's safe at home. This isn't real.
But Emmett couldn't hold back anymore. What if it is? What if someone needs us? Emmett threw on his coat and grabbed his rifle. Caleb begged him to stop, but Emmett flung open the door and disappeared into the storm before Caleb could stop him. For hours, Caleb waited, but Emmett didn't return. Then, around dawn, the cries began again, but this time, they were different.
Caleb, come find me.
Terrified and desperate, Caleb finally ventured into the snow to search for his friend. The storm had calmed slightly, but the forest felt wrong. Too quiet. No birds, no wind. Only his own footsteps crunching in the snow. He followed Emmett's tracks, which led to a frozen clearing on the edge of the woods. There, he found Emmett, standing perfectly still, facing away from him.
Emmett,
Caleb called. Slowly, Emmett turned. His face was gaunt, frostbitten, his eyes sunken into his skull. His lips curled back into a twisted grin, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. Caleb turned to run, but a tall skeletal figure emerged from the shadow of the trees. Its skin was stretched taut over its bones. Its eyes glowed like embers in the frost. Its breath hung in the air, curling like smoke as it towered over him. The last thing Caleb heard before the creature pounced was his wife's voice in his ear. The village of Nordlund sat at the edge of a frozen forest where the trees stood tall and black against the endless white of winter. The snow came early that year, burying the fields and cutting off the roads. The villagers were used to hard winters, but this one felt different. It began with laughter. Children's laughter, faint and distant, drifting in on the icy wind. At first, no one thought much of it. The children would come back inside, their cheeks red from the cold, and speak of a woman they'd seen in the woods. She was so pretty, little Elise told her mother one evening. She waved at me from the forest. Her mother laughed it off, but that night, Elise didn't come home. They found her footprints in the snow, leading into the forest. A search party followed them for miles, until the tracks simply ended. No sign of Elise, no sign of anything. It was as though she just vanished into the snow. The elders spoke of the Frost Hag, a creature of pale, icy skin who preyed on children during the coldest nights of the winter. She was said to live deep in the forest, in a lair made of ice and bone, and her voice was her weapon. It mimicked the voices of those you loved, a mother calling her child, a sibling begging for help. But once you followed it into the woods, you were never seen again. In the days that followed, more children vanished. Each time, their laughter was heard first, followed by footprints leading into the woods. The villagers tried to keep their children inside, but the hag's whispers grew louder. "She called to my son last night," one father said. "I heard her outside the window. Sounded just like me." No one slept. No one dared go near the woods. One night, the whispers stopped. The villagers awoke to find footprints leading out of the forest, straight into the village. The track stopped outside one of the homes, where the door stood wide open. Inside, a mother sat in her chair, staring blankly ahead, her skin pale as frost. "The children are safe," she said, her voice cold. "The Frost Hag has taken what she needs." The villagers checked the woods the next day. They found nothing but ice and silence. But some say, if you listen closely on winter nights, you can still hear the hag's whisper. The Antarctic base was a tiny outpost in a sea of white, cut off from the rest of the world by miles of ice and snow. The researchers stationed there spent their days studying the glaciers and the ocean below, their nights filled with the howl of icy winds battering the station. They were used to the silence of the ice, but one night, that silence was broken. It started with a sound, deep, resonant, and unnatural. A low groaning noise that seemed to come from beneath the ice. "What was that?" one of the researchers, Dr. Morris, asked, glancing at his colleagues.
"It could be the ice shifted,"
the other replied, though he didn't sound convinced. That night, Dr. Morris couldn't sleep. He kept hearing the sound in his head, a low, mournful groan, almost like a whale call, but different. It wasn't just the sound, it was the feeling it gave him, like something was moving below them. The next morning, they discovered something strange. Out on the ice, near the edge of the research station, a long fissure had appeared, a jagged crack stretching over 100 feet, with fresh, sharp edges. "It looks like the ice shifted overnight," the lead researcher said, inspecting the fissure. But Dr. Morris noticed something else. Tracks. Massive impressions in the snow, like elongated footprints, each one at least twice the size of a human's. The prints led away from the fissure and vanished into the distance.
"No animal leaves tracks like that,"
Morris muttered under his breath. The following day, the team lowered an underwater drone into the fissure. The camera descended into the inky blackness, its light cutting through the frigid water. At first, there was nothing, just the endless dark of the ocean. Then, something moved. A shadow, massive and pale, slid across the camera's view. It was there only a moment, but it was enough to freeze the entire team in place.
"Did you see that?"
someone asked, their voice trembling. The creature came into view again, this time moving closer. Its skin was ghostly white, almost translucent, and its elongated limbs trailed behind like ribbons in a current. But its face is what chilled them most. A featureless, pale expanse with no eyes, no mouth, just an empty, haunting blackness. It was staring directly at the camera. One of the researchers, a young man named Lewis, volunteered to examine the fissures on foot. He wore a harness, tethered to the station, and carried a handheld sonar device.
"Testing sonar,"
Lewis said over the radio as he stepped onto the ice.
"Picking up some movement below. Could just be the current."
Minutes passed. Then, suddenly, a sound ripped through the radio, an ear-splitting groan, louder and more guttural than before.
"Something's moving down here."
Lewis shouted.
"It's huge. It's..."
The radio cut out. The tether that had been holding him snapped, as though sliced cleanly by a blade. When the team rushed to the fissure, there was no signs of Lewis, just his helmet frozen to the surface of the ice, as though placed there deliberately. Shaken, the remaining researchers decided to abandon the station. As their ship pulled away from the ice shelf, one of them glanced back towards the fissure. There, beneath the ice, something was moving. A pale, massive figure, trailing long, translucent limbs, followed their vessel from below. And as the ship drifted farther away, one researcher swore they saw it watching them. Its blank, featureless face pressed against the ice. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the chills, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our page to stay updated. Stay vigilant. The unknown is always closer than you think.